Our topic tonight is the biggest killer and killjoy, really, that gives us a lot of problems is lack of microcirculation. If we say the biggest killer, the biggest killjoy is microcirculation, you will see in a moment what I'm referring to. Because many people suffer from rheumatism. And rheumatism, when you go down into the nitty gritty, which I like to do in biology since I have become involved in the Bemer, then you will find that rheumatism has a lot to do with a faulty immune system. And the faulty immune system produces the symptoms of rheumatism. Arthritis is another ugly relative of rheumatism, and it has the same sort of problem. There are lots of causes at a certain superficial level, but if you go right down into the nitty gritty, and by nitty gritty in biology, I mean molecular biology, cellular biology, if you look at that level, then you find the biggest problem there is an unhealthy cell metabolism, a very dysfunctional cell community in a particular area of your body. And here we see pictures where the cells, obviously, of the skin and joints are not in good order. Now, when the immune system malfunctions, all sorts of things will happen. One thing that we can notice is inflammation, an increased amount of inflammation and swellings. And of course, these things are resulting in pain. And the pain, depending on what sort of ailment and disease it is, can be quite debilitating. And in many, many cases, if not all cases, it is the cells of the immune system that are not doing their job. Because the cells the immune system is a very complex, multi-layered defense system that protects us from the killers out there called bacteria, viruses, and funguses, and sometimes even our own tissue when you have an autoimmune ailment. And that is because the cells that constitute the immune system have gone out of whack. But I will talk a bit more about that in a moment. And we can experience that in many ways. The pain could be located on back pain. Now, back pain is not necessarily immune system at all, but it is a kind of a pain that we would like to get rid of. We're not sure where it is. The pain is almost like the oil light in the engine, in your car, indicating that something is wrong with the engine. And it is very difficult in biology, and hence the doctor's task is also a difficult one, the general practitioner one, to determine exactly where the cause of all this is. And of course, the cause is looked for at the level of other components, muscles, tendons, vertebra, and etc. But if you go further down into the biology, then you will find a lot of stuff happening at cellular level. Now, pain in joints is very general in a way. For people who've got arthritis, it is pretty difficult. And rheumatoid arthritis usually affects joints on both sides, and it often starts with, and sometimes very suddenly, I believe, that swellings and pain become excessive, and even the most basic movements like pulling up a zipper or just making very simple movements of the body become characterized by excessive pain. Microcirculation is extremely important when you have a broken bone. Microcirculation are those tiny little, the very smallest blood vessels in the bones, and there are very few of them, that have to bring all the product, all the different enzyme proteins, and I don't know what all, to this area of broken bones and build the osteoblasts, the cells that make up bone tissue. And for that, we need blood flow. The blood supply in bones, as I already indicated, is pretty minimal. So it's got to work extremely well. But also areas like the sternum in your chest, which is a type of a cartilage, because the whole chest cavity is, of course, expanding with every breath. And when we exhale, it shrinks together a little bit. So the sternum is made out of cartilage. And there too, very, very few blood vessels are there. And the microcirculation is extremely important. If it gets cut open, is as in this case, of a person that after 15 months of unsuccessful conventional therapy in a hospital could not get this sternum to fuse again after the surgical intervention. After 1 month of Bemer, it was already starting to heal, and after 3 months of Bemer, it had solidly grown together. Osteoporosis is, of course, also one of those ailments where the bone density and the whole bone structure deteriorates with consequences. And again, part of this is a very complex interaction of many regulation parameters where the blood flow, especially in the microcirculation at capillary level, is extremely important to keep the bone strength and density up. And of course, there are many, many ailments that people seem to have that seem to break out, especially on the extremities. Like these pictures, they're not very appetizing, maybe. But for the people that suffer from this, they are, of course, looking for a solution. And to close wounds like the two on the left means we need sufficient circulation so that sufficient proteins and all the stuff that the body needs to mend and fix a hole in its skin, or deeper even, all that transportation and getting the energy there and getting all the components that are necessary to rebuild this part of the body's structure requires microcirculation. And so there are many, many things. Each one of these that I have just listed here in a way randomly that give us pain, that give us a very uncomfortable life, that are the killjoy of our condition, and sometimes even killers, are these things like diabetes, rheumatism, arthritis, constant back pain, blood pressure, which often results in heart failure, and today is probably one of the biggest medical killers that there is. So what can we do about all this? Also in sport, where the body is really sort of challenged at very, very high performance rates these days, because if you want to be 0.1 of a second faster, be it swimming, running, or anything else, or jumping higher, whatever it is, you can easily injure your body. And again, the repair mechanism underlying any injury lies in the microcirculation. So if we just think of pain, 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 pain is a signal of the body that says, in this area, the cells in that area are suffering, and the only way the body can fix it is by having a good blood circulation, because the body already knows what the problem is and would like to fix it at cellular level at least. And it has not the wherewithal, or no, let me put this differently. It knows how to self-regulate itself so that many of these anomalies at cellular level can be addressed by the body and fixed up. And that is indeed what the body has been doing ever since we were born. It's the ultimate killjoy to have constant pain. Make no mistake, you can do nothing. Everything stops. Your work stops. often your relationships, your ability to earn money, never mind all the personal grief and pain that goes with this. Now, are things like arthritis and rheumatism and headaches and all these terrible ailments that we can all get, are they preventable? Is there an answer for getting rid of this pain, especially the cause of the pain? If we're talking at molecular level, at cellular level, isn't that what the pharmaceutical products are meant to do? Yes, indeed, they do. But biology is not an easy subject. And many of these substances, if not all of them, also have a negative side effect. As you know, one can take a single sleeping pill to help you to sleep or fall asleep, or you can take 20 of them and almost certainly die. So there is a line here somewhere between benefit and risk, very high risk. And what about ailments such as macular degeneration, where you go blind slowly, tinnitus, where you have the constant noise in your ear, diabetes 2, which causes so much grief, especially also on the extremities. Many legs are amputated due to diabetes 2. Bed sores in hospitals. Once it is there, it is very difficult to get rid of. And there are cases where people suffer these bed sores for months, if not years, even in a hospital. And that, of course, opens up the chances for infection, etc. So, what can we do? A question that I often ask myself as I am in this business for 13 years now. I know biology is difficult, and I know there's a whole industry out there looking after this, but are we actually involved in health care, or are we busy with managing sickness? Managing sickness is not the same as preventative health care, looking for the real causes and trying to fix that up. Again, I beg your pardon, that is not the right expression. We are not fixing anything. The body is doing its own healing, but we can enable the body and provide some of the support structure from outside to really enable the body to look after its own health. Joints wear out, that's true. Bones lose their strength, that's true. There are lots of chronic ailments and there's lots of pain. And what are we told if there is no real answer to this? It's part of getting old, get used to it. Now, that is not good enough in today's world because we understand so much more. On the one hand, um, knowledge can make you puffed up and arrogant, but knowledge can also be used for the good of the patient and not just for the financial good of the provider. So again, are we busy with healthcare or sickness management? Now, slowly encroaching chronic ailments are symptomatic, really, of a poor microcirculation. And if you look through this list here that I've, again, just randomly put down there, then all these things have, when you go right down from the red light called headache, the red light called tinnitus, the red light called asthma, the red light called high blood pressure, etc., has at its cause poorly functioning cells. And these cells are poorly functioning because of lack of microcirculation, as I will explain in a moment in a little bit more detail. And why is it old age related? Well, the big surprise is it is no longer old age related. In a country like Germany, where there are about 80 million people, annually they have 20,000 under 10 years old youngsters suffering from old age related chronic ailments. That's quite bad. But I think you don't really have to be without good health, vitality, and quality of life. There are a couple of things you and I can do about it. And it's mainly anchored in lifestyle. And we, of course, that are related to Bemer and associated with Bemer believe that maintaining our good health should always be a priority. Whatever it takes, we should look after these bodies, contrary what some of you might believe, you only have one life, and you better look after this body, because that's going to enable you or disable you from achieving your purpose, your dreams, the fun, etc. Without good health, we are impaired in performance, in vitality, in just about everything we can do in daily life. Poor health is an enormous financial burden, especially the elderly. Many people in their 80s and 90s spend more money in the last 5 years of their lives than all the period up to that 85 or whatever. So financial burden often comes with serious financial consequences. Poor health, and especially chronic ailments, destroy quality of life. They rob us of a sense of achievement. And because there's so much pain and because there's so much frustration, it can often wreck relationships. Long-term ailments, in fact, pain of any type also, often lead to depression, because there seems to be no answer in the medical world for these things. Now, there are many ways to maintain good health. Appropriate lifestyle, I already alluded to that. Restful sleep, less stress, especially the psychological type that really constricts blood vessels every time you get stressed. Every time your cell phone rings unexpectedly, there is a tiny little shudder through your blood circulatory system constricting the blood vessels. Now, again, if you're 20, that makes no difference. If you're 30, your body can handle it. By the time you're 40, your body sighs a little bit but carries on with it. By the time you're 55, 60, the body says, hey, when are you going to have less stress? When are you going to change your lifestyle? And food, of course, has a lot to do with it. Exercise has a lot to do with it. And deep breathing habits, of course. So there's lots of arguments backwards and forwards about supplements and fresh food and vegetarianism and all that. All those things help. Because if you go down into the biology and you read up on the biology, the amino acids that we take in through the proteins of plant food. And the plants were definitely here first. And yes, we imbibe it in terms of maybe salad, but also meat. Anyway, walking or exercise of some sort is a good thing. Sensible living, whatever that might mean. And I'm sure you can figure it out. It's common sense stuff. So there are quite a number of ways to maintain good health. Now, you could ask, well, if that is it, why is not everybody healthy? Well, the first thing is not everybody lives a healthy lifestyle. And I include myself. But we're talking Bemer, and the Bemer can make some contribution to that which we damage by our lifestyle. And we all lead busy lives. We know that. We've got very stressful schedules. We eat stuff without thinking what it is. We don't take enough time for enjoying some relaxation. And the result, in the very least, is lack of energy. We're all tired by the time it is 8 o'clock in the evening. Does that sound familiar? Well, something's got to give, but we trust it won't be our health. Now, what's the biggest medical care problem today in the Western world? It's definitely chronic ailments. They're on the increase. They start at a younger and younger age. They cause a lot of problems, not just the pain and the chronic pain, but because there seems to be no respite, emotional problems appear as well. And in the elderly, of course, these problems affect, again, some organs, vascular system, immune system, and it really goes bad. So what can we do about it? Is the next new pill the answer? I doubt it very, very much. Can we beat sickness with drugs alone? No, we've already said there are some lifestyle choices we could use. Are medical practitioners the only answer? Now, please do not hear me wrong what I say next. No, medical practitioners are not the only answer. There are other answers too. And we live in a time of Google and Wikipedia. And yes, there is a lot of junk in between the good stuff. And I would say we should never try and make a diagnosis ourselves. We got people who studied for 7 years, got 20 years experience, and they should know quite a lot for diagnosis. But there are choices today. And the medical world also has to recognize there are choices. Lifestyle is one of them, but that holds for everybody. But there is emerging medicine, as I call it, that presents more alternatives. And let's face it, some of these alternatives are actually better in terms of their pleasantness and their less risk on the body. And one of these things is the Bemer. This medical device that is already distributed in over 40 countries, that has a class 2A in most countries. The FDA is on a different classification system, but in most European countries, Australia, South Africa, etc., the Bemer is a class 2A medical device. And can we expect more from other alternatives? Well, possibly we can. I'm not the judge of that. However, what I have noticed is that there is medicine that works and there's medicine that doesn't work. I don't think there's real medicine and alternative medicine. That much I have learned in the 13 years for sure. But one has to be careful with the alternative medicine because it's got to be understood. Because there is also a lot of snake oil out there. There is a lot of rip-off stuff, and one has to be very, very careful and discerning. Now, every now and then, of course, there's a breakthrough from an unexpected corner. We live in a time of technology surprises, technology stuff that appears that has to do like these two-wheelers here that really come out of the space program and out of remotely piloted vehicles and so on. And so we have breakthroughs. And even in medicine, there are breakthroughs all the time. And we have to have a look very closely at these various modalities. Now, there are lots of alternative medicine modalities out there. And of course, when you use the word alternative in some countries, that means bad medicine. So what does make the Bemer different? Well, first of all, it is a scientifically developed, scientifically verified, and medically verified device where everything the Bemer does is quantifiable, repeatable, and consistent in its results, like a physics experiment in first year physics. It is safe, it has no negative side effects, and it seems to work for many, many ailments. And again, when I say it works, I am not saying the Bemer is healing stuff. It is working in the sense of certain parameters that the Bemer enables and enhances in the body so that the body can heal itself. Let me point you to the right direction. It is a key statement of mine, though, to say right away, and I should have said it up front, but this is about as upfront as I can be, the Bemer device heals nothing. And then you say, okay, in that case, why am I actually listening to this webinar? Well, the Bemer doesn't heal anything, but it improves the basic physiological regulation parameters of which the microcirculation is absolutely fundamental. The microcirculation is fundamental to everything I will say from now on. But first, I must just point out to you that this body of yours and mine is completely self-regulating in terms of body temperature, blood pressure, cholesterol levels, hormone levels, protein manufacturing, all the stuff that goes on in your liver, in your lungs, in your heart, in your brain. It is self-regulating. You and I are not doing anything consciously ourselves. It is also a very networked entity. Whatever happens at your foot will affect the rest of the body. If something goes wrong, like blood pressure, there are many places in the human body that affect this blood pressure, either increasing or decreasing it. So it's networked in that sense. It's an optimizing system. It's like the machine that always wants to work in the optimum state. Optimum, in this case, for a biological system means optimum for living, optimum for performance, optimum for vitality and energy. It is an optimizing system in many other ways, but we're not going to go there tonight. And of course, the most amazing thing of this body of yours and mine is it is self-healing. We don't need doctors, we don't need hospitals. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the body itself has the healing agents, the healing processes, the healing systems built into it. And what the hospitals and the doctors and the Bemer for that matter do, we are enabling the body to sort out these self-regulation processes more successfully so that self-healing can take place. Obviously, if something is broken physically, like after an accident, then of course we need surgery to reattach it, but the actual healing will be enhanced or will be accomplished by the body itself. Now, all this is happening deep down in the body at the biomolecular and cellular level. And I just want to point out with this slide here that it is an extremely complex system. It takes many PhDs in biology and molecular biology, years and years and years to draw one of these diagrams to figure out what the liver is doing, for example, on the right. And the liver is doing it all along for thousands of years on millions and millions and millions of bodies. But it took human beings ages to figure it out. And here, this will only work when it works perfectly. It doesn't really work when things go wrong. And things go wrong at this level. So that is just something to remember. Also, you and I consist of 100 million cells that work together. Each one of these cells is tiny. It's about a millionth of a millimeter, if you like. A millionth of a millimeter. That is pretty small. And they work together building proteins, doing all sorts of very clever stuff. If you ever go to YouTube and you enter something like DNA transcription, or you enter something like kinesic linear motors, it is an amazing complexity of activity that goes on in these cells. And these cells produce about 15,000 million proteins a second. And the process of building a single protein is outrageously and awesomely complex. Have a look at it. Proteins are absolutely essential in the body, and they do almost everything in your bodies. And at this level, of course, nobody does diagnosis at that level. If you go to a doctor and you have maybe the symptoms of diabetes or the onset of diabetes, the doctor will not bring you one of these pictures and say, you see this protein and the molecular building program is not working, blah, 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 this, that, or the other. No, and that is also not his or her job. That is understandable. But what we must understand is the complexity at cellular level of building proteins and accomplishing thousands, millions and millions and millions of other chemical reactions every second requires energy. And now we're getting a little bit closer to the microcirculation. Thank you for your patience. This energy gets generated in your cells, in the mitochondria, where there are these little rotating engines. And there are also beautiful animations if you care to look at YouTube and you look at ATP generators, animations. You look at this and it is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Now, these things produce energy that the cells is using to do all these functions of building proteins on which the body is living. Proteins, 250,000 different types, have to be built according to a program, a complex program. And the energy production by all the cells of the average human being is about your body weight. And that is an enormous amount of energy to do all this work. But here's the deal. To be able to produce this energy in an animal organism, a little bit different to a plant, but in our bodies and animals, we require oxygen and glucose, which comes from the nutrients which come out of the food that we eat and digest. And this very complex story, also not 100% understood yet, but produces that energy. And when that energy is insufficient because there is not enough oxygen, because there isn't enough good blood circulation in the microcirculation. That is when many, many cells say cheers and goodbye. I cannot do the job I'm meant to do. And cells that don't get sufficient oxygen, whose waste, metabolic waste is not removed because there is poor blood circulation, will uh, dysfunction and die. And we require a very alert immune system for this. But because the immune system itself consists of highly specialized cells, some not so specialized ones, but for the sake of our argument tonight, it's not so important. The macrophages are not as generalized, are not as specific as some of the others. But what we do require is an alert immune system consisting of cells who also require ATP. And if it's not there, the immune system is failing. And that could mean that it attacks even healthy tissue. Now, if we can just improve the oxygenation, have better waste removal, have an effective blood circulation, get an alert immune system, is that it? Well, yes and no. We require that certainly, because then we would have less propensity to acquire ailments, and we would also maintain our health better. Now, here's a typical blood circulatory system. You've seen these pictures before, the heart there in the center, the red ones, the aorta going into the arterioles, ever smaller branching blood vessels, right down into the microcirculation. And this is the highway for the immune system and for the oxygen and for the nutrients and for the removal of all the waste products. If this isn't working, there's a medical term for that. It's called you're dead. Okay, so it's extremely important to function. But when you dive deeper into it, the microcirculation constitutes 75% of all the blood vessels in our body. And there are about 120,000 kilometers. 120,000 kilometers. That is 3 times around the Earth. Just let that settle in your brain a little bit. And that's all hidden in that body of yours. But the point is that it is at the microcirculatory level where the exchange of these important materials takes place. And just to illustrate you how small these capillaries are, if you take a standard ballpoint pen, you know, it's got a little ball right at the tip. Some of you may not even be able to see that without glasses. And in that volume, which is roughly a cubic millimeter, in our tissue, you would find about 3,000 to 5,000 capillaries, or capillaries, as you say in the United States, if there are any listening from the United States. Now, the stimulation of this vasomotion, which means the dilation and contraction of these very small microcirculatory blood vessels, is very, very important. And that is really all the Bemer does. Yeah, surprise, is it? If you've never heard of the Bemer, that is quite a surprise, because this has never appeared in any medical discourse, certainly not when you visit your GP. It's as easy as lying down on this mat. It has no negative side effects. You can use it at home, and it's extremely easy to use. So it's a no-brainer. And the Institute for Microcirculation in Berlin has shown with electron microscopy that this works extremely well. Before Bemer, you have a certain blood distribution. The blood flows rather sluggishly. If you look at these black dots there being actual red blood particles in movie format, you can see it much better. And you can visit our website, bemer.co.za or bemerblog.co.za. And you can watch movies of this and see how after Bemer, there is a lot more blood flow. And it is the body itself who decides, or that decides, where in the body this improved blood flow will take place, just as it would when you were 20. So the Bemer is not imposing a increased microcirculation on all parts of the body simultaneously. That would be foolish. The body is still under control and improves that microcirculation temporarily in the areas where it needs it at the moment, because remember, it is an optimizing system. Here is another picture of typical closed capillaries that after 2 minutes are opening up. What does that mean? It means capillaries are the very last tiniest part of the supply highway. It's more like a little dirt road, but it is on that dirt road where the actual oxygen and nutrients get exchanged with the intercellular space or substances, and that migrates into the cell body so that the little ATP generators can work, so that the cell can build its specific proteins that it is programmed to manufacture. The immune system is extremely important, as I said. And without an effective blood circulation system, the immune system, which consists of a lot of white blood particles, very specific blood particles that adhere to the blood vessel walls and are pulled along with fast moving blood flow, and they sniff out chemically through the blood vessel walls where there is an intruder, a bacteria, a virus, or whatever it might be, or a dysfunctioning cell, and it will move out, and in a quite logical but longer complex process, it will dismantle dysfunctioning cells, because that's not a good thing to have malfunctioning cells, and it will attack bacteria and possibly viruses. After Bemer application, we have a lot more of these white blood cells released. They live in your thymus and in your lymph nodes, and they get released into the bloodstream, and they can do their job. So what does all this mean? I've told you a lot of stuff. You say, whoa, but that doesn't address my particular ailment. That's true. It doesn't address my particular sort of pain that I have and that I suffer for years already. That's true. But underlying to all these things is a proper microcirculation. Because if the body has the ability to self-heal itself, but to achieve that, it needs good microcirculation, so that we can get the supplies, oxygen and nutrients, and immune system through the blood vessels. It'll also remove waste products and dysfunctioning cells possibly. That in any case improves our ATP production. The improved energy production means better ability to build proteins and these other 21 trillion other chemical reactions that carry on. And when this is all working in all 100 million cells in your body, we have a very good chance, probably 80% or more, of a properly functioning regulation process. And if this properly functioning regulation process is doing its thing, then the self-healing effect can kick into place. It sounds very simple, and on a PowerPoint it is very simple. But it is very profound in the way it works and in the way we can support the body. And this is what the Bemer does. I don't want to go into too much detail. I think there are a lot of business partners and independent Bemer sellers also listening. But it improves the dilation and the contraction of the blood vessels. It opens more capillaries. It prevents the blockage of the venole backstream. It improves that whole venole backstream. There is an improvement in oxygen extraction. Hey, and that's what we need. Even if you put people into a hyperbaric chamber, but your microcirculation isn't working, it is really all rather pointless. And the ATP production increases. And if you look at these 5 parameters, and they're all 5 parameters common to almost every ailment because they work at cellular level, you can see we have very specific values there. And this is like a physics experiment. You can measure this. It's not always easy to do that, but it can be done. And you would get exactly the same result. So this isn't just eat more garlic, as good as that might be, and you will get rid of a lot of problems. And that's probably true, but it is a very general statement. Eat garlic or eat an apple a day, keep the doctor away. There is some truth in those sentences, but what we're saying here, these 5 parameters we can measure. We can measure them accurately. We can repeat the experiment on various people. And we will always, within a reasonable margin of error, maybe, I don't know what it is, 2, 3%, maybe 5% even, and we'll get the same results. And practically, when it comes to finding out how this can all work, for different ailment groups, 2031, there was a user study many years ago, actually at the turn of the millennium, and they found that after 6 weeks of treatment, 65% of the people were already complaint-free, 23% had still some of the ailments, but it was improved, it had improved, and 12% said unchanged. And then they used it for a whole year on the remainder, on these 23 and 12%. And you know what? After 1 year of regular use of Bemer, 78% of the people said they were complaint-free. And this was a GP study, by the way. So it's a user study. It wasn't just lay people saying, I feel better, thank you very much. It's more than that. 78% said, my complaint is gone. 14% said it has improved somewhat, but I've still got the problem, and 8% said unchanged. Now, if these stories that I told you about the cells and the complexity of the biology, and we're all built to the same blueprint, why is there still 8%? Well, we found over the last 13 years, there is always a remnant of 6%, roughly. We can never get it lower than 6%. And that is because biology is so much more complex. Although I've told you many things here in a very simple way, the biology is much more complex, and there are, of course, areas, there are, of course, conditions, there are situations which demand a lot more than just the Bemer. Although the Bemer makes a very good contribution, as you can see on this diagram, it's not the whole story. And by comparing, in this particular case, what medication does, um, if you look at the bottom of this graph, it's in days. So on the right, you see after 40 days. The very bottom figure with the tiny little square, black squares, is a medication that is meant to improve or strengthen the immune system. It's a very particular thing we're looking at. If you do the medication plus some physical therapy, you can improve that a little bit. Let's call it a little bit of exercise, okay? But now the black triangle that you see is the Bemer on its own. In this particular case, the Bemer is already doing a lot more than this particular medication is doing. And if you add to that the medication, it makes another jump. Those are the blue circles. And that is the top black solid curve. And if you then still add a little bit of lifestyle stuff like physical exercise, etc., it will increase a little bit more. Now, if you look at the percentage, it doesn't really matter for us now at the moment in this webinar what the parameter is on the left-hand side. If this is truly a representation of what the Bemer can do, then we're onto something very revolutionary. We're onto something fantastic. We're onto something that seems to work, and we know now that it works in 78% of the cases in these studies that were user studies, not clinical studies, user studies, but there were multimorbidity and there were many, a big wide spectrum of ailments. Now, the Bemer, I mean, this is my favorite graph because, hey, there's medication with certain side effects and certain risks, and there's the Bemer with no side effects and no risks. You can't overdose, you can't overdo it, and you can't wrongly administer the Bemer. So the economy and brilliance of the design of our bodies is unsurpassed. And these cells work together, but they need oxygen, they need nutrients, they have to get rid of the waste products, and for that we need effective blood circulation. The result then is cellular functioning, an effective immune system, and the body can self-regulate its own systems very, very well. It's also applicable to all ages. We have treated premature babies, we have treated the youngsters, we've treated the elderly. We probably have a rate of satisfaction of people who use this, including medical practitioners who use the Bemer, that is unsurpassed. And if you think about it again, no negative side effects and easy to use and you cannot overdose. Guys, this is a no-brainer. Is it just the placebo thing? You believe in it and then you'll be okay? No, it's much, much more than that. It works on animals, and you cannot placebo a horse, I don't think, or your dog. Dogs or animals in general actually search out the Bemer, and what you see here depicted is the Bemer veterinarian system, which is just as easy to use, if not easier almost. And these animals are recovering remarkably well from many, many ailments. So it's for the healthy and active, definitely, because it improves your mental and physical performance. It will not be a killjoy. It'll be an improvement of joy of life and vitality and well-being. Yes, we all get older. There is no way around that. And even one day we will die. However, we will stay younger, have more vitality, have more joy until we die. Surely that is something to look forward to. It's probably the most cost-effective means of preventing sickness and staying healthy and improving our body's self-regulation ability. Just today, actually, I was talking to a person who had never heard of the Bemer. I explained what it does very briefly, and then the guy said, "How much does it cost?" And I told him what it cost. And he said, "But that is very cheap, because I come from the pharmaceutical industry, and I tell you one thing, if you get really ill with something, your health bill is going to financially ruin you." Bemer therapy for the sick. Yes, we have all these gadgets. You can see the gadgetry there on this picture on the left. Is that quality of life, though? What we want is we want to support all the self-regulating parameters that improve self-healing. And we can do that through stimulating the microcirculation. By improved microcirculation and oxygen, we counter much of the ailment-caused acidity, and that is just a synonym for poorly functioning cells. We get directly observable accelerated healing effects. Wounds and fractures heal probably 40 to 60% faster than without the Bemer. We can also improve the immune system. Most of the elderly eventually die of a weak immune system. And if we can strengthen that for longer, who knows? Maybe in 20 years' time, the 85-year-old Bemer users will support the 60-year-old non-Bemer users. There are no negative side effects, and it's compatible with every other medical therapy, including medication. Why would that be? Because it opens the microcirculation. The medication's active ingredient actually gets to the place where it is designed to be active in the body. But if you have a clogged up system, if you don't have a good vascular system with dilation and contraction, the vasomotion working, your capillaries being closed, your erythrocytes being clumped up because of much acidity, then I tell you what, the medication can never get to the places where it's meant to work. That just means we can maybe increase the dosage, but that'll increase the negative side effects. And you know, athletes like it. They use it a lot. Maybe poor old Armstrong could have done much better having a Bemer than having all the other stuff. Now, athletes use it. Why do they use it? Improved performance. Why? Because you have better microcirculation. More oxygen gets to the cells, especially the muscular cells. Faster regeneration and healing if you get injured. Our athletes, and in rugby, for example, it is very popular and it is used throughout the team. It can also save energy during the warm-up. It prevents sports injuries because your body can be so much more stressed physically. And reduction of recovery time after injury. Again, in these hard-playing sports like rugby, that's very, very important. And it's been approved by the International Olympic Committee since 2004 already. And it is used by the athletes from Germany, Switzerland, Finland, and a couple of others at the Olympic Games and accredited. Now, some people lie on the Bemer just once and they say, but I can't feel anything. Well, maybe you don't feel anything, but one thing is for sure. The physics and the biology at microcirculatory level happens every time you lie on the Bemer, if you feel it or not. There are many things you don't feel at that level. I could be getting ill already, but it's at cellular level, so I don't notice it. Um, but the Bemer, every time you use it, will always improve microcirculation, will always improve oxygenation, will always, even if temporarily, improve ATP production, that is the energy production, the adenosine triphosphate, and it will always, in some small but definite manner, help the body with its self-regulation. The result is physical and mental performance improvement, more vitality, for the elderly especially, better quality of life, or as we started off with pain, arthritis, rheumatism, etc., much better quality of life and good health. That's worth it, surely. And the success rate of Bemer treatment, if you're diligent and you use it, this is more or less a vertical depiction of the horizontal study that I had earlier on. When we say we use the Bemer for 6 weeks, then you can see that the orange people, in this case, become more and more and more, because after 6 weeks already, about 65 to 68% of the people are free of complaint. That that is a revolutionary graph. And we get it like this. We've done it in South Africa, by the way. Not rigorously clinical study, that is true. But, we did this on 800 people and we get the same result. Or let me say a very similar result. Our health is definitely priceless. Our health is also your and my own responsibility. And our health can be regained, it can be maintained by natural means, that's true, but we don't have too much time to do it. We live, especially in the urban environment, in highly stressed out environments, not just from the psychological, but also from the environmental and from the nutrition, etc. So it is time we take charge of our health, and you can maybe walk 35, 40 kilometers a day if you have the time. You don't need a Bemer then, but you could use the Bemer and it'll definitely be of your and my benefit. Remember, we at Bemer are also passionate about your health. Me personally, as an aeronautical engineer, I've become quite passionate about Bemer because of what it does for people and the results we have seen over 13 years worldwide. The Bemer has no real competitors. We are completely in a class of our own. And all the people who actually go out against the Bemer, especially on the internet, you can see that sometimes there. Let me give you some advice. Just ignore it. You cannot prevent people saying stupid things on the internet, but I can tell you what. Why would they just pick out the Bemer? They are actually secret admirers, but they got no better weapon than to moan and complain and to detract. Is this more than a better mousetrap? For sure. It's not a mousetrap. It's a revolutionary concept in real, easy, safe to use healthcare. But it requires a new way of thinking. It requires a paradigm shift. And that is the only real negative side effect we have with the Bemer, that people do not want to undergo a paradigm shift.